Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to video game news. Today is, well, it's hard to tell, but Wednesday, December 31st, the last day of the year, I believe. Yeah, I don't think we have December 32nd for 2025. So I guess Happy New Year, but I mean, why say Happy New Year when more than likely nothing is really going to change? Yeah, so I'm just trying to make sure I'm actually streaming here, and that'll take 30 to 90 seconds. What I'm wondering here is that if in 2026 this whole vertical attempt happens and I find that the number of views I get from vertical live streaming somehow is just like way less than just doing what I have been doing. So yeah, that is a concern, but I need to give it a fair shake. And for YouTube in general, the first 3 months are the months that you get the least amount of views, and then you never, for me at least, you don't really seem to gain back views easily. Thus having 1,000 subscribers and getting 1,000 plus subscribers and getting 1, 2, 3 views on a lot of stuff. Let's see, is there anything else to say? We'll do some warm up and then we'll jump into the news. There won't be much news. It's still very much not in the realm of possibility that any of the mainstream video game journalists are actually going to work, or that the people at video game companies are going to put out any kind of press releases. I wouldn't be surprised if there are plenty of game developers throughout the world that are working, maybe working from home, but they are not likely going to be putting out any announcements. So here we are in the SteamDB 24-hour peak concurrent. I've disabled, at least temporarily, the auto scroll. I need to work on that more, and I've tweaked a lot of pages, but mostly what I've been doing over the past couple days is the same old and playing Vampire Survivors, but I played a lot of it off screen and need to make more footage. At the 5th act of how many acts this game may have, I feel like a lot of content is getting unlocked off screen. A lot of runs I've done have also taken really long amounts of time. So much so that yesterday at one point I was just like, you know what, I'm tired of playing Vampire Survivors off screen. I want to just get up and move some stuff around and clean, move furniture and things like that, which some of this furniture I have moved in one location and now I'm moving it in another location, and I don't want to become this habitual furniture mover. I happen to have once met someone who was bipolar, and they would literally, when they were in their not depressive mode, but the other side of the bipolar, the manic episodes, that's where you feel really good for no good reason, high energy, they would just have decorators decorate, or they'd redecorate or repaint a room, and then maybe 24 hours later they would swing back into a depressive episode and they'd go, oh, I hate this, and potentially redecorate the room. Not very effective. I don't think that's my problem by any means. I moved a bunch of stuff in the hopes of getting other stuff done, and unfortunately it's a lot like defragging a hard drive in my mind, where you're just moving files around to try to get them in a linear path to try and get things organized, and sometimes you just have to move entire chunks of files to the end of the hard drive to make room for the smaller files to be organized. And then you move the large chunk back. And yeah, I am at the point now, a year into trying to clean and declutter an entire house, that at least I'm moving furniture towards an actual final thought. And some of this also is just after having furniture sit around, I'm realizing that some of the furniture is just not very functional. I need furniture that are usually bookcases, tall bookcases, and will use that vertical cubic feet as best as possible. I also put on my Discord, which really doesn't have any subscribers, not any, and I'm the only active poster on it, but I put an idea for a project in the future. I've long since wanted, and this has nothing to do with this chart, I've long since wanted to take my shelves that are to the right of me now, that are full of anime and DVDs, and have really close individually addressable LEDs, so you could potentially light up just like one DVD case, which you could do that, but it would be very expensive. It would be kind of counterintuitive because you basically in that case want a vertical spotlight, not a diffused shelf lighting option. And that's something I guess LED strips, cob lighting, whatever is available that I've seen, and I've seen a lot, just can't really do. It cannot change the characteristics of the lens and the diffusers that are built in around the LEDs. The LEDs themselves, circular light coming out in every direction of the angle that it projects. So you have cheaper ones that are not individually adjustable for bookshelves that still probably aren't bright enough for like under counter lighting, which would make the shelves themselves look nice when displayed. Or you could roll your own with individually adjustable LEDs. But when you get to individually adjustable LEDs, they are going to be really small if they were supposed to be lighting up just even a section of a bookshelf. So getting it down to the resolution of just like here's disc 5 of a 6-disc box set is not really viable because there's just not enough room for the chips. I'd almost have to make custom LED strips, and that would cost millions of dollars, I'm sure. And so yeah, I've been quagmired on finding an LED strip that might actually work there, or just finding lighting for the shelf in general. I did just have to replace one early attempt of lighting on the bookshelf, and it didn't look or end out particularly good, but I didn't want to lose the lighting that it does provide. It doesn't actually light up the shelves though. Inherently, when putting up bookshelves now, that there is a prerogative that I wouldn't have thought about in the old days of running wires either from the back side from one shelf to the other, or from the side from one shelf to the other. And yeah, if not running and drilling entire holes to do lighting in that fashion. And maybe it's not even the back side, maybe the wires would come from the back side, but then you need the light in the front, because that truly might be the case. Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if you eventually just see an IKEA setup where there are metal railings with pegboard holes and you put the shelf on the pegboard pegs, and that connects a circuit that runs 24, maybe even 48 volts of DC voltage through the board, in which there is an LED light built directly into the boards. And I wouldn't be surprised, yeah, I probably should patent this idea, if IKEA sells something where it's like, here's a LED strip in the back, here's one in the middle, and here's one in the front and the back, and you can pick your lighting solutions that way. And then the adjustable shelves, no matter where you put them, as long as you put in the metal pegs in them, will connect and electrify. That'd be relatively safe, electrically speaking. You're not going to kill anybody with 48 volts. Then you could easily see also that, like, one side of the wall of the shelf would be positive and the other side would be negative, and shelves next to each other could be lined up and connected. Yeah, but then you start doing 4 or 5 shelves and you might be pushing a lot of current into it, but it'd all be parallel stuff too. It's kind of a genius thought, come to think of it. But that's not the genius thought I was thinking of that I put on my Discord. The more genius thought I had is I have this TV. It's already got PySlide OS, so it can show slideshows, extra TV. It would fit nicely on the shelf. It could also be mounted around the shelf or on top of the shelf. And I have the software, at least in mind, to take synopsis, single page screenshot synopsises of each show, maybe not each individual DVD, and flash it up there. I'll something like Warehouse 13. If you haven't seen Warehouse 13, you don't really need to see it, but if you ever see inside the warehouse, they have these magical artifacts, and in front of each of the magical artifacts, at least in the later seasons, there's this little digital screen that tells you what was on the shelf before it got stolen, or which happened a lot, or it magically moved itself. So it's kind of an inventory system, and not a terrible inventory system really, although the need for it to actually be on the shelf is questionable. And modern real inventory systems is probably all digital with NFC tags and e-ink screens if you're going to do anything like that. But what I was thinking of doing is modifying PySlide OS so it was part of full page OS, so there was an actual web page you could browse and search the inventory, and then the expansion on that was to install Miraclecast. Miraclecast is capable of being a server to Myra, not Miracle, but Miracast clients. Miracast is a lesser known wireless display technology. It's like Chromecasting without the Google, but some cheap projectors can act as Miracast servers. So if the main TV was synced up wirelessly to a cheap projector, I mean like $50 or less, that can receive Miracast servers signals, you could send a picture of all black except for one little sliver of square that is white. And then effectively that cheap display projector becomes a individually per pixel, probably 1080p, projector that spotlight that you could then point the projector at the bookshelves and spotlight a DVD that way. And then that would be way cheaper and way more adjustable and controllable. You just have to write some code, I won't say a little bit, but some code, to auto-generate these squares and then send them off, which isn't really that hard. You can build it around a grid system, 1080p, 1920 wide by 1080p, would then be stretched out and diffused probably quite a bit, so it would be a soft fuzzy light, and you would probably want to try and find a projector that's pretty bright because you're going to be shooting a light across the room. But in a dim theater room, it might work particularly well. And so anyways, that's the thought I had for a project for the future that I may never get around to, with me focusing more on still just playing and making video game footage and cleaning and decluttering, and with my eyesight, which is now almost the #1 concern at this point. It's just, you know, this project very possibly could be done right as I would have no use for it. But yeah, it's an interesting thought, and my previous thought as far as an IKEA LED bookshelf is not bad either. The only real problem with it is that the connectivity aspect probably would need positive and negative on both sides. It's not a big deal, really. Yeah. Not a big deal at all. Anyways, so I threw that out there in the ether under a category as far as project ideas. It would be nice. I'm always hoping to find someone who has more energy than me, who's smarter than me, who's more ambitious than me, to take some of these projects to fruition or work with me in some way. Yeah. But yeah, I imagine that project is gonna stay where it is. But yeah, mostly I've been playing Vampire Survivors. Vampire Survivors is still a great game, but it is getting a little bit long in all the craziness that has unlocked in it and how drastically different a game it is. I definitely don't think I would want to play something like Megabonk anytime soon. It's arguably even longer than Binding of Isaac is, in that there's a whole extra adventure mode in Vampire Survivors, and Binding of Isaac has never really given an adventure mode, because that kind of violates the experience. Have I been doing anything else? No, with just being busy. I almost didn't do all the dailies on Memento Mori, but I'm not gonna quit playing Memento Mori anytime soon, I don't think. And I've kind of stopped paying attention to the 24-hour peak list here. I feel like, particularly right now, anything you might see would be a blip, but I also feel like it might just be very hard to squeeze any real juice out of these charts, because a lot of people playing something like 7 Days to Die probably means nothing. Doesn't mean that there's any new excitement or lesser excitement in the game. Same could be said for Terraria. On the other hand, Sons of the Forest being played probably is indicative of the announcement of the new Forest game that's coming out. So you just kind of have to have forehand knowledge And the real changes are likely down here. Megabonk, for instance. The phrase friend slop is coming, I think, more into actual use as a word, and there is this argument being made, I think, around that phrase, that the fad of making games for streamers or for people to play with their friends for one time and then get bored and never play it again may finally have reached its peak. Because I think people are starting to realize that the idea of friend slop games doesn't make sense. There still probably will be games people play with their friends, but more and more I think it's going to have to be games that are good also being played alone. I'm still really unhappy with the sizing here, and you'll see with other pages what I mean. Because maybe I didn't really tweak it too much, and that's part of the problem. But yeah, the text size here is pretty small, and I really am leaving a lot of these tabs to tweak and then finding that I'm not really spending that much time actually tweaking them, or not putting too much into it. As far as the most wishlisted games, we still really are not expecting much of anything. Yeah, and I'm finally actually getting use of my Steam Deck. But yeah, still a ton of work to do. As I'm moving furniture around, here is a much better example of the size I would like everything to be at. As we look at this day in history. Yeah, as I'm moving things around though, I have this really giant table that really don't have any use for, and I think I'm going to just end up putting it in my garage. But I half want to build a crate around it, and I don't have boxes anywhere that big really to do that. And it almost certainly wouldn't really matter, because by the time you're putting something on a pallet, by the time you're building crates around things, the object is so big or so heavy that if you can disassemble it into smaller parts and move it that way, that really is the right way to do things. But yeah, putting it in the garage would be the right move. Yeah, as far as a lot of this stuff, this warm-up stuff now, it has really become stuff that I'm not really looking at. So if I could really just jump into talking about video game news from the first minute, I would prefer to really do that, although it doesn't help, because then I get into other ideas of rambling and warm-up. It's just needed. The only thought that has potentially crossed my mind is to do a whole warm-up show and not hit record and then hit the stream button and literally talk to nobody, just go full on schizophrenic and talk to dead air, and then start streaming and broadcasting to at least the potential of somebody listening and hearing. Although, let's be fair, there's not a big difference there. I was thinking about how the dark web and the deep web might come to save the internet in the future. This is a new thought I'm speaking. But yeah, if all of a sudden AI truly just ruins the internet, which I'm not sure it was just AI, frankly. I think algorithms as a concept have ruined the internet and created what once was small communities of people actually communicating with each other into now giant communities that are being completely trolled and overrun by AI and bots and algorithms. Tons of reposts, things like that. But yeah, there is now an argument certainly that if you were going to remake the internet, maybe you make it in such a way that reposts cannot be posted without directly referencing their original time they were posted and throughout the entire internet. Yeah, deduplicating a compression-based internet would make a lot of sense if you were going to start over from scratch. I guess the good news is I'm probably old enough that I won't see the internet completely fall apart, and I was definitely around when the internet for personal use was just coming into its heyday, which even then wasn't particularly that great. Yeah, I definitely do not have high hope for the app-centric stay within our own walled garden concept that many metaverse type thoughts are being pushed. Oh, I saw the new Carmen Sandiego game on my fall list and removed it because it was not positively received. Netflix, I believe, owns Carmen Sandiego. They came out with a new Carmen Sandiego cartoon. It weirdly made Carmen Sandiego the good character instead of the bad guy. And I'm not sure that they ever really changed any of that. And then years later, after that Netflix thing, they came out with this cheap video game that was probably supposed to come out way closer to the streaming show. But yeah, it's not particularly good. Yeah, even in this page, I would say I really struggled to get the font big enough. Yeah, a lot had to be done here just to get the font this big as far as mobile games go. And I'm hiding some stuff, but there's still a lot of dead space, a lot of margins, a lot of things that should not be, and a lot of tweaking, just trying to take up every single pixel if we can. As far as mobile games, I already mentioned I'm still playing Pokemon TCG Pocket, trying to unsubscribe some, unfriend some people who are probably not playing it, giving people a break that it is Christmas and New Year if they're not responding to trades. But yeah, there's still very little game actually in Pokemon TCG Pocket that I actually play, and pretty much I never play the game aspect. I just do the trading, which is all they really promote and focus. It would be crazy but super nice if somehow TCG Pocket led to you owning the 8,000 plus cards I think I have now in some other game digitally, that you could just build up a massive collection. Although even if you did own all those cards, it may not really matter too much in a different game. And yeah, I'm still doing Memento Mori, which I'm slightly ahead, I feel like, in Memento Mori at the moment, just because they're not really pushing anything too big either, any new content, any new character. In both of my accounts of Memento Mori, which if I only had one account, that would have saved me a ton of time over the year or two I've been playing it. I have nearly one copy of every character, with many characters really only needing one copy at most, and at that point I could really start to focus on grinding up my main character to make a much stronger team as a free-to-play player. I didn't work on the RSS feed replacement concept. One of the things about OBS is that having different profiles does not change the setting as to whether you are using vertical or horizontal preview windows. And so I set up vertical preview windows for my OBS and when I'm recording Vampire Survivors, and now I'm looking at vertical windows being squeezed into a horizontal resolution when I'm doing vertical streaming. I guess we'll solve that fairly easily in the future, because particularly on Linux that might be very easy to solve, so it's just not changing those settings back and forth in the first place. But I could also have another HDMI plugged into this monitor, and that might solve the problem too, because then I could tell to use a different resolution. Yeah, fingers crossed I can do that in Linux, and fingers crossed I can do it with an AMD GPU. Yeah. Steam hardware, we're still waiting for it to cross over. I'm still debating whether I want it to look like that or that. That's probably better, just to let everything fit. I got the most recently played games to fit a little nicer. It is still perhaps something where I would like to be able to squeeze these three to be smaller and have the text a little bit bigger. It is now questionable whether I am actually trying to make these pages look good so I can read them, or look good so your normal person can read them. As far as thumbnails go, this is also kind of the size I'd like thumbnails to be compared to these thumbnails, which are rather small. May not be too easy to build up. By the way, this page is at 200% zoom, and so when I go down to 100% zoom, you can see just how smaller it looks. But if you go to like 300% zoom, that is closer to where I would want it to be. And I still really haven't figured out how to change the CSS to make a page work that way without also using the zoom feature. Yeah. If I could get rid of the empty space here and here and here and just get rid of all these margins, you probably could squeeze all of the information into that size. But yeah. As far as the actual thumbnails though, and text size, this is 500% zoom. That's as far as Firefox can go, and that is really the size I would want it to be, but that doesn't hold enough room, I think, to get it to work. And this is 120 zoom, and yeah, if we zoomed it up to 150, that's really what I would like it to be. I probably won't tweak that one. The Steam sale is still going on until the 7th. I doubt I'll buy anything more from the Steam store. I think I bought plenty of games. Probably way more than I actually needed as far as games I'm actually going to cover in the next year. And yeah, I imagine not too much is different here. This, as far as size, is I think as good as it's going to get. If I try to zoom it up, you could see you could get a little bit bigger, but it would just be squeezing things more. And a lot of this is not really changing much as I zoom it up further. And it's really mostly text that is getting changed, and some text is definitely not getting changed. Yeah, as far as free to play and upcoming and top sellers and popular new releases, I imagine all of that is pretty much exactly the same. I guess the big picture to the side goes away and becomes a big picture here with 120%. I may need some kind of guideline too, as far as just where do I want video to be on the screen in the vertical streams. I know probably won't matter too many people, but it would be nice if there was a specific spot it was always placed at. But I don't know if there's a way to detect whether video is playing, and in this case this is an on mouse over event that starts this. I assume this is more of an animated GIF than an actual video. But yeah, if you could detect that and scroll to that, that would be nice. It is kind of interesting that there isn't built-in features that when you hit play, it automatically like dims the rest of the page and does something different. There's still a decent chance that I might play something like Bollocks Pit. It is different enough from Vampire Survivors, although it may not be as in depth as Vampire Survivors. Now, having seen the massive amount of depth, although in fairness, I don't know if the next Survivors-like game I play really needs to be anywhere as in depth as Vampire Survivors. Like, these could very well be that the buffet was Vampire Survivors, and now every now and then you get just a small slice of something that is like Vampire Survivors because you've had the marathon buffet eating challenge. Yeah. What I said just makes any sense at all. No refurbs available, and I'm not expecting to find any refurbs even for the OLEDs anytime soon. Since it is basically 1 year warranty, I think is what we saw, you could see where even the OLED really just doesn't have any refurbs. Although that would assume a pretty crazy thing that they were going to stop manufacturing the OLEDs, and I don't think Valve would admit to stopping manufacturing on them. They could simply raise the price to be very high. And certainly it's worth pointing out that the price to entry now for an OLED is effectively $500+, because you can't get the refurbed one for $439, and you're not going to find any LCD versions. eBay now would be the place, or sites like it. Facebook Marketplace maybe. But yeah, that would be the place to get a Steam Deck cheap. if people were really selling their Steam Decks. I'm not sure too many people really are. I saw a thing on Reddit where somebody ordered, I think, a motherboard and got a box of rocks instead through Best Buy, or BestBuy.com in particular, and they just had this nightmare scenario that eventually worked out, but it was a whole filing a police report, can't charge backing through the bank, just talking to customer service people over and over again who are not being helpful, going to Best Buy just to be told that Best Buy, the stores, is not really treated as the same as BestBuy.com. Yeah, Walmart and Walmart.com, same problem. At the very least, one thing I think Amazon has done in acquiring some of their other businesses that they've acquired is that they've, I think, treated those stores as more interconnected stores. The idea of taking returns to stores that either they are working with or actually own is a much better system. Although I think Walmart.com stuff you can return at Walmart, and that's why I generally would say big ticket items make sense buying at Walmart.com, except for the fact that the biggest ticket of items of furniture is going to be pretty cheap furniture if you buy it at Walmart.com. Still probably better than buying it on Amazon, but yeah, furniture in particular is a big issue as far as what to do if it's broken. And I definitely wouldn't recommend TVs and electronics, particularly TVs from Walmart.com, as those models are particularly bad. It's kind of crazy Walmart doesn't sell mattresses. Maybe their online does. But yeah, returning mattresses to a store is also kind of weird. Anyways, we're supposed to be talking about video games. I'm fairly happy with the size, I guess, here. I don't see how you could do much more with the space as far as the most played games on Steam Deck. You can see Megabonk is a big one, Bullock's Pit is a big one, Balatro is a big one. I haven't gone back to play any Balatro. I don't see myself doing that unless I just completely burn out on Vampire Survivors or yeah, completely do everything on Vampire Survivors. Balatro and Vampire Survivors contradict each other nicely and complement each other in a weird way, in that Balatro's a slower card game, whereas Vampire Survivors is a faster top-down action game. And I'm pretty sure, I mean, what you get for $3.74 is a ton. I have been playing Vampire Survivors through the gaming mode of my Steam Deck, which is a little different. I think it changes the settings a little bit, tweaks things so that it potentially runs better. But also with the lock screen, when the screen goes off, you have to type in the lock screen to unlock it. Whereas I don't think you're really doing that when it's in desktop mode, which probably highlights that the lock screen is on the Steam Deck is not as good as it should be. I imagine there's all kinds of little tweaks that a more custom piece of hardware in a Steam Deck 2 could address, if it will actually address them, which is somewhat of an if. Like, it may not be a case where things are that black and white, really, or that easy. Yeah, I could see low-level integrated control. I could see possibly even trying to do an ARM CPU to save on money and power usage, or doing a hybrid thing where there's an x86 or AMD 64 chip in the Steam Deck too, but there's also a ARM coprocessor. It's actually surprising we haven't seen something like that already that just executes ARM codes. Something with like an ARM core built in. But yeah, there's RAM is still going to be a major issue. Yep, and I probably need to crop off the bottom bit. Because I haven't really addressed the things popping up at the bottom there as far as links. Although I should probably fix that somewhere else. Yeah. Again, as far as sizing, some of the words here are wrapping around. But overall, the text in the numbers is big. The text here is big. Thumbnails are relatively big. Sure, it would be nice if it was something closer to this, but then we are losing the numbers on the side and the checkbox. Which, okay, maybe I could scale up a little bit more if I got rid of some of the empty space and we say squeezed it all in. Again, I'm just trying to get everything to be as big as possible, as easy to read. Yeah. Alright, and again, this is probably going to be a short stream because as far as video games chronicles articles, I think I may have one, which I don't think I actually worked on the way this looks, so you can see it's a mess. Let's see. Quote, "It's going into very good hands. CD Projekt is selling good old games." Co-founder Mikhail Kinchinsky says good old games will uphold its value of freedom, independence, and genuine sense of ownership. Interesting. Yeah. So we shall see, I guess, what happens as far as good old games goes. And even if I shrink this page down, it doesn't actually fit until I'm at like 67% shrinkage. Remember, I'm heavily mutilating these pages. Yeah. That's about the size I would want things to do, to just get the actual meat of the stories, which is what fair use really wants you to do, is to use the smallest amount of someone else's copyrighted material, although these are press releases, so they're not really copyrightable anyways, and to be as transformative as possible. Yeah, this is the first Video Games Chronicle article we've ever had since I started doing this tweaking, so I didn't work on it. So then that brings us to the Gematsu articles. And in that, I think I have everything zoomed right, although maybe not. You could go up to 120%, but I don't know if it's really needed. Needy streamer Overload creators announce a dark visual novel called Sister Other Paranoia. Which, yeah, seems like somebody has been murdered and crammed under the bed here. So here is one of those cases. Do I want something like this on Gematsu, or do I want something like this? And I think it's probably best just to do something like that. Now what would be really crazy is if I just did like this and this and just started playing all of them at the same time. Which, yes, I can do that. Should I do that? Yeah. Because I guess you are maybe addressing a multi-language concept here of showing the trailer in 3 different languages. It does show an interesting aspect as far as how we could compare and contrast different trailers. But yeah, not a lot there as far as the teaser trailer goes. I'm still not really willing to play the audio and get even more content IDs than I already do in these streams. Yeah, I can't help but have a bit of a feeling that Needy Streamer Overload is much like Doki Doki Literature Club, just kind of pretending like it's a visual novel like other visual novels have been, but then really more perverting the concept of visual novels to almost parody them or make fun of them. Speaking of parodies, I watched the new Naked Gun movie. Red Letter Media said they liked it. I don't think that style of comedy ever really has been a style of comedy that's made me laugh out loud. There literally was like one laugh out loud joke in the whole movie. It's a lot of visual gags, it's a lot of winking to the camera, it's a lot of puns. It just feels a little bit lowbrow humor. In fairness, I will say though that the new Naked Gun movie does that with a lot of polish. What occurred to me after watching the movie is the Liam Nielsen or Leslie Nielsen, I think it's Liam Nielsen, is the new Frank Drebin Jr. and they spent no time at all explaining who the mother was as far as replacing Leslie Nielsen. And if such a movie was to get a sequel, I think you totally would want to focus on that. It's just to try and figure out, like, of all the potential mothers, who is the mother of Frank Drebin Jr. And they didn't touch upon that, so it just kind of felt like a generic police squad, police Naked Gun movie. Generic concepts, generic jokes. It does probably speak to writing just really sucking these days as far as comedy. And frankly, there just aren't that many movies to parody. The most noticeable parody is a scene from a Mission Impossible movie that I didn't even watch. And yeah, that's probably what's killing any kind of parody movie in particular, is that there just aren't that many movies to parody. Yeah, I guess if you went into the deeper realm of streaming and stuff, yeah, it is. Yeah, but that's the problem though, is if there was a parody in Naked Gun around say, Pluribus. A lot of people wouldn't have seen Pluribus. If there was a parody around Stranger Things, a lot of people wouldn't have seen Stranger Things. A lot of people that go to movies to watch movies wouldn't have seen that. And that's the kind of thing is that you would expect that there would be a reference to Stranger Things there, or there would be a reference to Pluribus or some of the other big streaming things. Weirdly, there's not even like references to like Star Trek, Star Wars, any of the Family Guy, Simpsons stuff. None of that makes sense. There was a long-running joke that he was just being handed coffee cups all the time and drinking a ton of coffee, and I don't even really see the humor in it. Is that he's just constantly drinking coffee. Yeah. So yeah, I wouldn't say it was bad. It's just really on the level of all the other Naked Gun movies, worth watching maybe once, but not really even worth talking about as much as I have. It's way better than some of the other Leslie Nielsen parody movies that tried to be like Airplane and were very poor in their quality. Which I didn't even make it through to the end of that one. Not sure if I'm that big of a fan of comedy movies or that style of comedy at all. Parody comedy, prop comedy. Anyways, yeah, I'd rather have mostly drama with a little bit of comedy in a movie, or watch some kind of comedy panel show, TV show, or competition with comedians, or listen to a bunch of podcasts. The tragedy of comedians on podcasts is that they often just are going through a list of unimportant news events. Yeah. Moving on, the other Gematsu article, which may be the only Gematsu article we have today, the only other one, is Music's return has been announced for PC. It's a indie rhythm game returning. Yeah. I guess we will just go full ADD. This will give us a little bit of information as to see if there ever is any real major change in these streams, in these trailers. For the most part, I don't think they would bother to change too much. It is visually distracting, to say the least, though, to show all three of these. They're really pushing the audio element here, and seems like this may be closer to playing with a keyboard or some kind of MIDI device that's going to plug into it. And then they're saying that the songs are as low as 30 cents, so seems like that's a lot. I'm not going to come here and scroll and show more of the same thing. It is a shame, I would say, that Steam, Valve themselves, does not just have a free music rhythm game that would take any kind of soundtrack you already have purchased from any game and import those MP3s and turn them into playable levels just automatically. As a default, here is our music player slash player, an actual game. Jonathan Blow, I was listening to an interview with him. Mostly the title was that he was an AI skeptic, and that's why I clicked on it, and that he just doesn't know if AI really is going to make a good product from using AI. But yeah, he talked about why in his games they don't really license music, because it's almost impossible to license in perpetuity, or even really license for a reasonable amount of time. Yeah, I'm not sure if you can license music through the system that is set up more than a couple of years without then renegotiating licensing, which may not even really be an option. We see it over and over in games that have licensed music, that the music tends to just go away and get removed. Here's that game, Sisters, Other Paranoia. I didn't work on this at all, but there's still stuff to be done as far as changing the appearance. And here's musics. Yeah. As far as an actual game, it doesn't look particularly that good, and frankly it looks like it could just as easily be a mobile game. Yeah. This is the kind of thing that the visuals don't. This is the same trailer we just watched, so we won't watch it again. Boy, does my computer get a lot pickier when playing a video on Steam. It gets its fan hypes up a lot faster when playing video on Steam versus playing a video on YouTube. But yeah, this is obviously an audio-based game, but I would like to see the visuals a little bit better. But I'll make a YouTube short on it, or pretend like I'm going to. 2XKO launches January 20th, 2026. It's a free-to-play fighting game. It now has a release date. The entirety of this page is being shown. Can't scroll around. Just can't scroll down. Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time. Sales have topped 1.5 million. And we can see some thank you art fitting in nicely. We can see that this game is rated very positively. And that brings us to gaming on Linux. And yep, I rewrote a little bit of this and changed the font size. Gaming on Linux also, I haven't worked on. So if we shrink it down to 80%, that's easier to read. But yeah, CD Projekt and Good Old Games co-founder Mikhail Kaczynski acquires Good Old Games from CD Projekt, which this might be a Ubisoft plan that's going on there, in that they are the co-founder of Good Old Games, and CD Projekt is taking Good Old Games and focusing exclusively on that, which is probably the more profitable thing. This is certainly a good way in which Mikhail can protect himself financially, as there is a decent chance that expectations will be too high for the next Witcher game, or sales will just be too low for the next Witcher game. either one is fairly possible. Yeah, it is, I think, very possible that it won't sell as much as I'd want. And even Cyberpunk 2077, while it is considered a good game by now, I'm not sure it was that great of a game, and I'm not sure it made as much profit as they spent developing it and developing the engine to put it in. And they, I think, probably hurt themselves trying to make their own engine for Cyberpunk, because Witcher is going to be in the Unreal Engine. And I don't think Cyberpunk is in the Unreal Engine. Maybe it is. But yeah. Learning Unreal, I think, hurt them, and just making Cyberpunk 2077 in general hurt them quite a bit. They were pushing too hard for Cyberpunk, I think, and we're just not really in a wave of huge amounts of fandom for Cyberpunk stuff that would have made sense. They should have instead been making Witcher 5 after making Witcher 3, or Witcher 4 after making Witcher 3, and just pigeonholed themselves, unfortunately, into only making that type of game. Yeah. But yeah, there definitely is a reason why game companies are constantly getting pigeonholed into doing the same things over and over again. And then that brings us to GameDeveloper.com. And let's see if I bring this bigger. That actually doesn't work. It's the same news. So we've had the same story from 3 different news sources. Good Old Games co-founder Mikhail Kaczynski acquires the platform. Yeah. And yeah. I don't think I'd ever actually buy anything from Good Old Games. There's been some times where I've been given games for Good Old Games, but usually when buying a new video card. But yeah, the fact that they don't give Steam keys out pretty much eliminates them. And again, this looks fine as far as size. Maybe the line weight could be a little bit more spread apart as far as just line spacing goes, not line weight. But also, I want to just start eliminating all these margins. I also desperately want to find a way for YouTube to actually have a thumbnail. Because yeah, it kind of sucks that vertical streaming like this does not really generate a good thumbnail after the stream has ended and after the video has been fully processed. And it should be able to find something. If anything, it feels like to me they've not made their thumbnail code compliant with vertical format stuff. And that brings us to all the new games on Steam. There's room for rephrasing a lot of this, but it all fits at the moment. The text is perhaps a little small. That being said, the interstitial things here really don't matter too much. And yeah, I haven't worked at all on trying to improve the slideshow, which again is something I should do. But same rules apply as usual. When I swipe down like that, that means I'm closing the tab to just ignore it. And even a tower defense game like this all of a sudden looks a lot like Vampire Survivors to me. And yeah, that is a crazy amount of comparison that's going to start happening in my mind, I think. If I'm really interested in a game, I'll put it on the follow list when looking at games. And yeah, this is another one that really should be in the adult section and yet is not being labeled in the adult section. This picture here is just not loading up for some reason. If I swipe this way at all today, which would be kind of surprising if I did, it means I'm keeping it to make a YouTube short on it. Yeah. Suppose in the middle of this whole time, it would kind of make some sense to put out more mobile games and things that you expect people not to actually see, but I don't know why you're putting your game on Steam if you're not expecting people to actually see it or play it. Honestly, I don't know why half of the people who put games on Steam are putting games out on Steam. It's frankly, I just think too cheap, too easy to put games out on Steam. And if the barrier to entry was just a little bit harder. Yeah. I don't want to see Steam become like a McDonald's where anybody can work there, anybody with incredibly poor decision-making skills or hygiene practices can work there, and they just kind of don't care. And there's many restaurants like McDonald's that are like that. And you know, Steam does feel like it kind of is like that. And the McDonald's example may not be too off from what really it does happen on Steam. Is that you have a lot of, if each game was its own McDonald's store, all being owned by different franchise owners, you have a lot of them that would go out of business and get shut down, and it doesn't reflect particularly badly on McDonald's as a whole, but it eventually adds up. And I think we are probably in the phase, or approaching the phase, where it is going to just add up. Although maybe not, because maybe I am the only person in the world that's actually seeing most of these garbage games. Yeah, I'm not sure. There might be something in this. Probably not. Yeah, in fairness, any of these games might be good. And I may just be missing it. Missing the element. It might be that the screenshots just are not doing it enough of a service. Is this a pinball game? I think it is. Or something kind of like a pinball game. I do think that we'll probably be done with this stream fairly quickly today, though I don't think there's going to actually be that many games. I'm putting a lot of them on the follow list. I'm noticing that. Striker 1945, I recall seeing this game. Now, it is in no way really the same kind of shoot 'em up that Vampire Survivors is. So these comparisons are still questionable. Yeah. Yeah. I'm still having weirdness with pages like this where it just does not want to put the page as far as the list here in a horizontal format. I don't know why that is the case. Like some pages it works, some pages it doesn't. I suppose, yes, there might be an argument that somebody might want to swing by for New Year's too, but I don't think so. Yeah. And yeah, I guess I can say that it's probably been a month or two since the meetup I was going to has done anything, and I don't have 100% confidence that they're going to start back up on the meetups in January or ever. I haven't said anything to that level, but who knows. But for me personally, somebody who really has nothing to do on Christmas or New Year, feel like there is a room for a meetup then, but probably not then. Probably would be better to have a meetup, say January 2nd or whatever the first Tuesday of the new year is, and so it's not in the way of other meetings and events for people who do have friends and family that want to do anything with them. So yeah, at some point I'm gonna have to find somebody ambitious to partner with me, I imagine, to run my own kind of meetups and hope that we can actually get people to show up. Yeah. There was a arcade only light gun game where you shot up a demonic carnival. It never got ported, I don't think, to anything else. Well, actually I think it maybe was ported to PlayStation or something. But I remember seeing that game fairly fondly. It probably was only a couple hours of footage. Yeah, and by modern visual standards it probably looks like garbage now. But it's kind of crazy that that concept hasn't been potentially remade even. Yeah, when there is absolutely no news, when I have nothing to say, we get through all of this very quickly. And as far as the follow list cleanup goes, I imagine there isn't too much that I want to really look at. So yeah, a nice and short one. I guess that gives me more free time to play Vampire Survivors or do whatever else I was going to do today. No reason to stretch it out. That's going to be it for the stream. Happy New Year. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and keep on watching. Thanks.